5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa, ni hao, jambo, marhaba, and all the other universal greetings. It's time for the Armist Inquisition, yet again, episode 231, on Sunday, the 15th of May, 2022. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
And I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight, we're going on a nub adventure. We're going to be exploring the nubs with Ziggy Dan. How are you doing, Ziggy?
Hi, guys.
It's nice to have you, and thank you for jumping in at very short notice, 2 weeks ahead of schedule.
Time traveling.
Yes. And you have a YouTube channel?
Yep.
Called Ziggy Dan?
Yeah, Ziggy Dan channel.
And for those who aren't aware of your channel, you've got tons and tons of videos exploring these weird enigmatic artifacts that we see on ancient constructions and ancient monuments, which, I mean, is there an official name for the nubs?
No.
It's
no.
just...
There's Lifton Bosses is the official mainstream title for them, because they convince they're just for lifting. Well, if you have a look where the positions on blocks, they can't be for lifting, and the round is underneath. So how are you going to get a sling or a rope on something that's round? It's just going to slip off. It's ridiculous excuses to say they're for lifting. They're not. There's something different about them.
I mean, it's like the natural instinct I think probably everyone has when they first see them. It certainly was for me when I first saw these things. Oh, that's something you lash a rope round to help you with moving them and putting them in place.
Yeah. So that would be, if you look into it, that's probably the first, the most popular or mainstream view is that's what you'll be given. But then you start seeing or thinking about 50-ton blocks in Peru, 100-ton blocks and all this. And you start thinking, well, how big's the rope? How thick was the rope?
Yeah.
To lift these things and everything. You start thinking, this is just, there's something badly engineered about all this for lifting. It just looks impossible when you start looking into them. You start finding them. There's even tiny ones hidden in places, which could have absolutely. There's no chance that they'd be used for lifting.
I mean, if it's to do with lifting, you would think from like an engineering point of view that the size of the nub would have to be correlated to the size or weight of the block, and that they would be in sort of uniform positions for stability reasons, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I don't know.
No. Let's, shall we throw up a picture? Just to give people an idea. Let's, we've got this one that you sent me of some particularly worn nubs.
Yeah.
Some good nubs.
Yeah. Now, the other mainstream one is that when they're splitting stone, so they chip it along. I don't know if you've ever seen wedge holes, ancient wedge holes in stone, where they put a wooden wedge in and they break the stone. Mm-hmm. And
right.
it leaves a wedge. Now, they're saying that these nubs, the other way they've come about is when they're splitting the stone, it's leaving. So you'd have where the spaces in between would be where the wedges were. And that bit was the bit that's left on. But then, why fashion them? Right, to make them more ornate, like you get in the likes of Oliante Tambo on there. They're really ornate. They're really well well made, they're not rough or anything. So why would they do that?
Yeah, and you would think,
If they were just left rough, you could say, okay, it is the splitting with the stone, right? But even that doesn't add up really. But so why would they formalise them then? After, why didn't you just leave them rough? There's no point in them carving them nice and smooth and slightly angled this way or this way. And different shapes, round ones, oblongs, square ones, half moons.
yeah.
They have to be made. They have to be made. They can't be from just snapping stone in half. Because look at the one at the top of the wall with the two on it. The oblong one with the two on it.
Right, yeah.
Could you imagine if you split stone, it would leave that?
No.
Absolutely not. No, that's nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't leave. There's a gap between the bottom of the stone and the nub, isn't there? It should be. You would think they would be on the edges, all exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if you see ones on the edge, and this is where people are pointing, go, it's just splitting the stone there. Then you'll get one in the middle of the stone, a bit further up. So you say, well, how could they split the stone there and then leave three nubs? One's higher up the stone. How could they create a nub there? It's out of place. Just because you'd expect the stone to cleave neatly, whichever type of stone you're trying to cut by.
Mm. Where's this example from, Ziggy?
This one will be Oli Antetambo in Peru.
In Peru.
Yeah.
What strikes me just looking at this one and that oblong stone you mentioned at the top there is to get these nubs, you've got to remove all this material around the nubs and purposely leave these exposed. They're like relief carvings, aren't they?
They're exposed nubs.
Isn't that where the forklift goes?
I mean, there's a lot of effort gone in to leaving those nubs there.
But you could, as I'm saying, about maybe they had wooden cradles now. That would fit on their wooden cradle. But the back of that stone is probably a totally different shape, which wouldn't it'll have no nubs.
Right, yeah, these are polygonal megaliths.
Yeah.
And they're all different. Are you going to make a different wooden cradle for every single stone?
You know what? It looks like, when you pour something into a mould and it sets and you have those sort of casting leavings. And we've spoken to people before, haven't we, who had that theory that something to do with vibration and
Brian Forster.
Exactly, yeah, and liquefying the stone somehow.
Yeah, but as Brian said, all these stones are different. Why would you make a different wooden mould for every single stone? It doesn't make sense.
So the other thing as well is, are the nubs just on the outside? There's no nubs on any other sides of these blocks?
Where you're looking now on that wall, if you further along that wall, there's somewhere you can see them on the back.
All right.
The shape of the stone, you think, well, how are they going to get the cradle? Will have to be all shaped there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has he gone? Can you hear him?
No.
And I think your mic's gone a bit quiet there, Ziggy.
Okay, can't hear you, Ziggy. You just went really quiet then.
You're always trying to chase a new engineering thing to accommodate a new block or a different shape nub or the way it is. It becomes ridiculous to every time you think of something you could use. It just doesn't add up. So there's something different about them. I'm saying it's the positions they're in. They tell you something.
It's weird that they are all different shapes, but they're clearly designed to Tetris together to kind of a square form. But why wouldn't you just use squares? Squares.
Yeah, you get to do square ones, and some of them, I mean, loads of them have no nubs at all. And you might find, I was doing Indian temples today, big place and everything, and I could only find about 5 nubs in the whole place. And a couple that had been clearly knocked off, but the rest of it was all smooth. You go to another Indian temple next door, loads of them, they're all over. The foundations, around the doors, around the drains, architectural things like load-bearing pillars and things like that. And I think that's what the masons, I think probably the masons in the ancient past probably weren't very savvy. They were probably stonemasons, they had short lives. They probably didn't read a lot. And that they were probably on the quarry from an early age. So the easiest way to probably read a building plan would be some sort of code. No, an easy code for people to learn and remember.
Right.
Which is the load-bearing stone. This one's for the wider window. This, you know what I mean? All the fixtures and fittings that you need to build a temple.
Was that Indian temples you just mentioned?
Yeah.
I think this one is from an Indian temple. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. That's Bharadishwara temple.
And so here we've got examples of nubs along the bottom. What would you call them, like foundation stones? Would that be right?
Yeah. You could say, well, it's a pattern. Like, you see along the Greek, right now, the Greeks invaded India prior to them starting to build temples. So whether it's Greek technology, they're employing the masons because they're using the same techniques in Greek temples and the same in Indian temples. So it could have spread that way. But then you say, how does it spread to Peru?
Yeah, that's what I was just kind of thinking. So is it found on every continent then, these kinds of nubs?
Right, mostly right up until 1600s, especially in India, because they were still building. You can find them, but whether the stone is repurposed from other temples that have fallen down.
Right.
Another thing that happens, you see, they repurpose the foundations and everything. Take the lot. I've just done a temple. One of my last few videos, a temple you can see. It's pieces of scrap. They're all over the place, and it looks like they built a wall from the frieze of a temple that's fallen down. And when you look around the site, there's wrecked temples everywhere, all in parts and bits. So the same as Warangal Fort in India, it looks like the stonemason yard's been nuked. It's cobbled it all together inside 4 very ornate gates, really, which are nubs, which ones are a solar marker for the solstice, and it has 3 nubs on the split, and the sun has to come right across this split in the arch, which is only inches wide, and it has 3 nubs on it. So why would he be there? It's just to mark that. There's a fellow in Peru who will show you on a certain day of the year, a corner of the street, and the sun's rays hit the nubs, and they cast long shadows down to the next nub, and it only happens on one day of the year. So you'd obviously know that, we've got buildings that have the date on the roof over most of all buildings used to have the date somewhere on them.
Yeah.
What the building is, the name of the building, what it does probably, and everything. So that might just be the date it was built.
Yeah,
They're telling you the date it was built by the nubs.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Just going back to the Indian one, Ziggy, you said that you had a feeling that this sort of technology might have been transmitted from ancient Greece. Was that Macedonian invasion of India, first of all? And is that because There are no sort of megalithic examples of megalithic architecture in India before that.
Well, there's dolmens and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Plenty of dolmens in a place called Aol in Karnataka or something like that. It is the place where masonry started in India. Right. It's dolmens everywhere and quarries and stuff. So it just seemed like this was the earliest place for temple building, starting here for masonry, collecting masonry and that. And there's dolmens, so it must have been occupied for a long, long time for our dolmens there. And they've been preserved. And some of the earliest temples are like, to me, look like carvers. They were a cube with has a holy relic in it. And then they've been embellished over different cultures that have took over India. They've embellished that space, the temple. It's the same I don't know if you've seen me Baalbek videos. The foundations of that Baalbek were not Roman.
The Trilithon stones.
They're not Roman, they're Phoenician. They might have built this up. I know covered it all over in nice Roman stuff, but they didn't do that platform. There's other temples in the area built by the Phoenicians that the Romans have come along and decorated afterwards, and the platform is exactly the same profile as the ones at Baalbek. It's like as if they were practicing on these smaller temples.
Wow, and I mean, Baalbek is in the right area for being Phoenician. When you think of Phoenicia, you think of Tyre and Carthage.
Phoenicians were there before the Egyptians, the Romans, and the Greeks. The Phoenicians were there first, and there's ancient Phoenician quarries right by where these temples are built. So, if definitely the Phoenicians built them. To me, they built them.
And the Romans were very practical in that sense. You know, if they came across a huge, foundation and they wanted to build a temple there, then why not just take down whatever's there and reuse it? Why go to the trouble? And why cut 1,300 ton blocks out? Why is 10 130 ton blocks not hard enough? I just don't get Baalbek at all. I don't think we have a good explanation for that whatsoever.
So because one of the official excuses, if you like, for the huge stones is that there's a landslide area. That's why they built them so big. But I think what they built with them is a dock, right? And they brought the rest of the stone in barges and built it that way. On water, they built a dock, filled it with water, built it that way, downhill.
I mean, there's some ideas about the Great Pyramids being built that way, that the Egyptians might have used canals to divert like a little tributary of the Nile right to the Giza Plateau.
They're finding them now. They know there's docks. They know the dock. They have docks right up to the Sphinx Temple. Right. The dock right up to there, but they're finding remnants now. The canals on the plateau. So if you had canals on the plateau, then they would just be like. I mean, you must be familiar with canal building in England, right? Going up over the Pennines. 480 feet, the same height as the pyramids. So from Liverpool to Leeds, it's 480 feet. You go up or down.
And the locks.
Exactly the same as the pyramids, 480 feet. It's with locks. It's over a long distance, but that's all you need is locks. Strategically placed. You can do it.
Yeah. Didn't you find ships in the desert as well? Like remnants of boats knocking around?
They buried some at the pyramid, yeah.
There is some there, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think the sort of boat that you have in the boat museum and all that, I don't think that. I think that's they're just ornamental or something there. You don't look stairsy enough be carrying huge stones.
No, I suppose if you built the canal, though, and you finished building it, you'd send some dignitaries down in a fancy ship to have a look at the pointy things you've just built.
And then just leave it there.
Yeah, and then say, get inside. This is your tomb, and then they just bury the boat. Don't need it. Won't be needing this again.
There's depictions in Egypt of barges like carrying stone, and I think there was a documentary a couple of years ago. The papyrus we found that described some sort of boat they built and everything. The ancient boats, and they were moving stone to fix the monuments and pyramids, right? Something like that. It doesn't exactly say the pyramids on the papyrus, but it was claimed by mainstream that they're claiming that this is Khufu, right? This is Khufu's boat, and this is the papyrus that proves he built the pyramids. And it doesn't. It proves that he had repairs, so that's all. Does not prove that he, right? So they built a barge. Egyptologists, it took Mark Lehner, and they commissioned a barge to be built identical, right to the total method that was used to prove you could move a block. And the barge started to sink, and had a 2-ton block on, which is the average weight. So they decided to cut the block in half. So the exercise has already failed. But they haven't proved anything. It failed. So they cut the block in half and tried again, and the barge sank. So it couldn't have been done like that. So the depictions and things that they're saying, that's how they done it. It might be fanciful. They might have that might be just them imagining. Oh, they must have had a barge this big. Let's draw a picture. As anyone, you know, you can use your imagination to imagine, like I'm saying, cradles and all this. I could probably draw a cradle to fit around a nut block and all that, just the same as somebody in the past what they thought was the conveyance for the huge blocks being a boat, just a bigger Egyptian boat. It doesn't look like it would. It looks like that would sink with the size of the block they has on.
I mean, if you're struggling with a 2-ton block, the average weight of the limestone blocks, then good luck with the 40-ton and 60-ton granite blocks in the relieving chamber roofs. And they came from Aswan, which is what, about 800 kilometers to the south.
I don't know whether when people do the math of how quick you'd need to lay a block.
I've done it. I'm sure I've done it live on this podcast many years ago. Was it every 2 minutes?
How many barges are you going to need?
Yeah.
To blocks.
Yeah.
The quarries and all this to fulfill that task.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. The stones at the top the same age as the stones at the bottom? I don't know.
The stones at the what?
On the pyramid, are the stones at the top the same age as the stones at the bottom? Does anyone know? Just thinking about time.
I imagine that when we started hacking into the quarry, the top layer would go on the bottom of the pyramid, and the next layer would go on the next and the next. So it would have been the oldest rock, bedrock, I suppose, when they got further down. Well, they ran out of limestone, didn't they? Have to get it from somewhere else in the end.
Yeah, it was cased with limestone casing blocks, and they were all taken off and used in Cairo, in building Cairo. So what you see now is it would have been perfectly smooth, and there is rumours that the top stone may have been made out of gold.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
but we just don't know. You know, none of us were there. We can't say.
Right. Plus, no, the water erosion on the Sphinx thing. Right. Now, they say built in the rainy days. Right. It was much more rainier. The climate was totally different. Vegetation everywhere. It's lush. All of great stuff. Right. It rains a lot. The pre-pyramids on the Giza Plateau, their surface areas generate, for one inch of rainfall, 1 million gallons of water. Right? Just for 1 inch of rainfall. That's how big the surface area is. They generate that much, 1 million gallons of water. So you've got to manage this water, this rainfall. So I think there was moats around the bottoms of the pyramids. So you had a water source so you could feed your canals there. Right, when it rained, you collected the water and you used it. It's the same as what you were looking for before that block hole on St. Tambo. Right, it's terraces, so it has to be watered from the top. And you have sluice gates, and I think that what you're showing there with the nubs, I think that might be a sluice gate where they open. Yeah, right, because the sun falls at a certain time of the year, you know, right, we've got to water this part, lift the gate. And because it is basically a cascade of water to feed the terraces. It's a grand waterfall, but it feeds the people. Do you know what I mean? So if you can get sacred springs, if you can find a hill with a sacred spring, right, if your tribe, you go to a foreign country, you've just invaded, no one lives there, you need water, fresh water. If you can find a hill with a fresh water source, you made, because you've got fresh running water. You can build a civilization just on one hill, starting there, a small tribe, because you've got running water. You can bathe, you can use the toilet further downstream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can see friends here, and that's how you see the likes of Delphi in Greece, built around the sacred spring. Every time you go to the legend board of the site will say, there's a sacred spring, the adorned it. When you see the earliest parts of the building and that, you can see where the stone changes, right? And new masons have come along, better tools, and they dress the old altar. And then someone else comes along later, and they put another cladding round, and you can still see remnants and stuff like that. But this is where you start seeing, when they've fallen down and bits have fallen off and all that, you start seeing nubs underneath. So, you know, stones back in the past and all this, like, you know, they've, in the early days, you can find them. From old buildings or even older buildings. So,
well, this is like what Mario mentioned last week about. I think it was the Pyramid of the Sun at Chichen Itza. That they reckon there's maybe 2 previous pyramids underneath it, 2 previous constructions.
There's another one. I think it's Mexico. It's had 5 new layers on top. It looks smells. That's what it means, doesn't it? It means built 3 times. 3 times over, the name of it. The one in Mexico's had 5, and you know what the interiors look like because they've gone through the tunnels, so you can see the first one. Right. And it's like step pyramids. The first one covers, and then the next one goes a bit of a plateau, and then it goes further down the back, and then it goes up again, and then further down. So it's built enough from the front. They almost keep the first pyramid very close to where they start building on top, and they just build backwards and upwards from on that one anyway. Which it's like so it's obviously a sacred place, and you read them that it's always sacred spring and all this, like so. Sometimes I think. Well, you know, if you believe in the Great Flood and all that, like, and there's people, right, you're getting evidence now there's been major disasters, right? So when you see likes of Libya and half of Malta was lost, right, through rising sea levels, and they can't find out who built their temples. It just seemed to appear from nowhere. They went away for 800 years to come back, and another lot of people built another lot of temples. 2 of them are only 500 yards apart, and there's going to be some temples. It's like having 2 massive clocks on the end of your street. It's ridiculous telling the same time. Do you know what I mean? What day? It's only going to work twice a year. You don't need 2 temples for such a small island. But there's 30 of them. There's even more than that. There's 30 of them that you can probably find yourself. There's even more. So why does every tribe, like even if they live 500 yards apart, have they got to have their own solstice market?
It's
When the one
bizarre.
down the road just tells you exactly the same thing.
That's
It's just, there's too many of them. But when I've been to them, and you can tell, when you look at the floor, there's post holes in the floor, but the stones are being moved over the post holes. So was the area temple underneath, because they shifted on the planet because of the flood and stuff, right? They've had to readjust the temples because the earth shifted. So which we know the 23-degree tilt, right? If they moved to accommodate the new tilt of the earth, they survived the flood, but you know what I mean? So they've come back to the temples and they've gone, well, they're in the wrong place now a bit, so we'll have to move them around. And it looks like some of the interiors some of the stones are really, really well cut, but some of them are really, you think it's next to a really rough one, and you go, why didn't they do that one smooth as well? Like, why is that one all, it's different, So it looks like it's been cobbled together from bits of other temples. It's really been moved around. And I think that there was probably older temples that once stood on the spot that were wrecked.
Yeah. They were
And the spiders
reconstructed.
came back years later and probably found their way back and decided to, like, we know what these are for, but they're in the wrong place now. Let's commemorate them by getting a new one. And maybe it was just a temple mania building on the island because there's so many of them.
Well, I mean, we've got like cathedral building mania in the Middle Ages, haven't we? Where there was a massive boom in the Gothic era. Maybe there was something similar after like a great reset.
Well, you see, like at the pyramid, there's all the cardinal points and everything. So you say, well, it's told the time, if you like. The earth hasn't moved. There's nothing shifted. It's still pointing in the same place. But we've got a 23-degree tilt, so it was built after the tilt, right? So they're establishing a new north, east, south, and west. This is the marker, and if anything goes wrong in the future, this is going to be the marker. This is going to hold all the world's mathematical knowledge. It'll just take a bit of time to work it out. Like the speed of light supposed to be in
I was just going to ask you about the speed of light.
Right. And the north, south. So it would be a great marker if there was ever a disaster. If there's no tilt again, but so you could find a way back and get your bearings and say, right, we know where we are now. This monument still stands. We're definitely in Egypt.
What is the correlation with the speed of light? Is it something to do with the latitude that the pyramid's built at?
The dimensions of the room, something. I mean, it's complex maths. Sometimes, geometry, like I just don't.
Let's throw up another nub example. I've got this one here. I think, is this one Angkor Wat?
Yeah.
Angkor what?
Angkor Wat? So this is Cambodia. So what have we had so far? We've had Peru, we've had India, and now we're Cambodia. And where are our nubs here?
No, I'm not. Well, not a good picture of that.
Is it above those three little guys on the left-hand side?
And there's there's better pictures than them. But anyway, yeah, it's up there. Anyway, anyone can go. You're going to have to go and Google Earth yourself or Google Maps. And you can do them at 360 degree on any temple. Loads of temples, and you can check them out yourself, look for them yourself.
Wow. Yeah, well, I can see two here. Like, one of them looks like it's right on the corner, this near corner on the left-hand side. I mean, it's just in a completely random place.
Now, the ones inside the temple, like, they're like a gold colour, and it looks like they've actually oozed out of the wall, like they were using some sort of cement to make them, and they've put them on in strategic places. And when you get to the end of the temple, there's all this, like, a blob of powder, like this big massive blob of powder, like a statue, all melted, and it's all made of this stuff that's in the walls, using out the walls. You can have a look at my video of it. I've done the video.
Well, yeah, anyone who wants to deep dive on the nubs, just go to Ziggy's YouTube channel. Link will be in the show notes for that. I mean, this one's pretty mad. This one, where's this one? This wall of nubs.
Loads of nubs there. I can see them.
That's in Greece.
Now, these look pretty uniform, don't they?
Well, these are being rebuilt a few times, you know. So they could have been foundation stones, right? And they're all the best ones they could find. You just line them up, haven't bothered. And the Greeks use lifting nubs. They use lifting gear. They're actually on that site, on columns. You can still see them. And there's a place in Turkey called Sardis. They still have them on site. The lifting
set of ancient ladders in the front there as well.
Ancient step ladders. But I mean, this is a completely different beast from the ones in Peru. I mean, just when you just look at these stones, I mean, they're so uniformly cut and they all look similar size, very similar oblongs with nubs in the same. Sorry?
They're quite ornate, the Greek one. And they've changed them into adornments, but the likes of other temples the Greeks have done, they're random, pretty random. And they're not in a pattern at all.
It's a shame they didn't finish these.
You've got round ones on the corner, then you've got like 4 squares, a couple of triangles, then a couple of round ones. And you're thinking, well, maybe the round ones are where the pillars go, the load bearing, that's the load bearing part. That's what they're telling you, you know. The masons look at that and they know where the column's going to go. That column's going to go there. Because it's not a uniform pattern. It's random on the base. So I'd be telling you what goes above. The same in the Indian temples, around the drains. Now, some of the Indian temples, they've got no drains at all. You can't see them. But they have the monsoon season. Right. Now, all that water goes out of those temples. Right, so they've got hidden drainage because I've followed outside the temples. You can find the drain channels and things like that, where they get all the water to go in different places. Because before you build a civilization or temple, you've got to have drains, haven't you? They go under everything. You need drainage to start before you put your foundations down. So you've got to know where they are before you put the rest of the gear on top.
Right.
You know, places in the temple where you're going to have a drain because it's going to leak or the rain's going to come in that part. So you'll know where it is. The engineer will know where it is, exactly where to put that stone so it drains that way. Yeah.
Wow.
I was just wondering as well, you know, you mentioned the temples in South America where certain times in the year they cast a shadow in a certain place. Is there anywhere else, well, any other continents where that happens, or is it just in South America on those temples?
It's in Cusco.
Yeah.
No, I haven't known anyone else to try and test it.
Right.
But only the main core of pyramids, they're lying at an angle. You know, they're already like 50-degree angle. So the sons play havoc with that because you need, you know what I mean? You need a flat wall, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. A message through that way. I mean, it still could work with the angle, but then it'd be more, you're going to have to, it'd be really complicated. You'd have to have really complicated configurations, which you do get anyway. But yeah, it's, I don't think anyone else has really tried it.
Right, okay.
You don't get many places where there's a whole wall, like there. It's just, you know, it's wreckage. The other thing is, there's a lot of repurposing. The nubs ends up all over the place in some temples. So try to find code or a meaning, it's ridiculous. Just give up. Just completely to try and do that. The position where they are on, if you can get a pristine temple that hasn't been, it's been buried for 3,000, 4,000 years, and they uncover it, and they're on there, and you could say, right, we've got the perfect model. We can have a look where they are and why they're there.
Well, that raises a question because Göbekli Tepe was purposely buried. Has there been any nubs discovered there? Or are the T-pillars have two giant nubs on either side?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you see, there's a thing called bossage. Right, so when you're dressing stone, if you're going to you're going to have a carving on the stone, right? When the quarry will leave a lump because that's where the carving's going to go. You know, it's called bossage.
Right.
So when it goes to the stonemason, the carver's yard, who's going to carve the thing, he's got something to work with. You've left a big lump for him to work with. So that all has to be designed with those T-heads in Göbekli Tepe. Now they would have to be thought about, you know, what design they're going to put on them before they cut them, so they'd have enough to put the big tiger or whatever it is that's crawling down one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's in relief, isn't it?
Yeah, massive, deep relief. I mean, it's like they're jumping out of the rock, aren't they? Like the stone.
Now, some Indian temples unfinished, and you see these lumps sticking out. People go, oh, it's a nub. They send pictures and say, no, it's a nub, it's a nub. And it's not. It's bossage. It's just, because if you have a look at the one next door, like the carver has already started chipping away. He's carving in that, and you can see where he's already progressed across the wall. So they see 3 blocks, and they think, oh, 3 nubs. It's not. It's just he hasn't finished the job. That's all. You just need that much stone out for them to work with. So when people see that block, they tend to think it's a nub, and it's not.
So are there any nubs at Göbekli Tepe or what? You laughed like you were teasing me. Have you found something and you're not telling?
Well, there is artifacts, like, and you go, oh, it's good. But I mean, it's stretching it a bit, like.
Is it? Right, okay.
You want it to be a nub, like. But,
hey, but look, what's been excavated? Is it 5%?
Not
10%?
It's 5, isn't it? I think.
Or even older. It's Karahan Tepe now.
Yes, yeah, and there are other. They just keep finding them, don't they? These buried sites. So
I'm seem to remember them saying that they haven't even excavated Göbekli Tepe down to its proper foundations. I don't think.
No, 5% of it they've done.
Yeah,
they've got one circle. They've started one circle. They've been at it for what, 25 years, maybe.
But
yeah,
there is some anomalies in the rubble that's around there. That you can see it's fresh stone. You're thinking, that must have been off another temple. No, they put it in the rubble.
Oh, the fill when they filled it in.
So there must have been other temples, and they find an eggs and things like that in the rubble. So there must have been other parts that they've repurposed to just use it for fill, and they've carried on like So, and you see that all the time, repurposing.
I mean, that's our best chance, isn't it, to find something, because we have this problem with all these temples and stone circles and stuff, is that we can't be sure what was repurposed and what was carved specifically for that site and survived to the modern age, whereas by deliberately burying the site, that's our best chance, isn't it, to try and make sense of what was going on.
Well, I look for chisel marks, tool marks, and that, you know, you can say, well, that was the tech they had then, and if those stones are all the same, then those stones must be the earliest ones, because they look like they'd be, you know, a deer antler. It's being used to pick the stone, not a metal chisel, you know, not a decent chisel. Because you see some stones in molds, you see all different chisel marks on them. So that gives me a clue to say, well, those ones must have been, because that's the tools they had at that stage, and look how good this one is. That's a different tool. Looks much more modern, or, you know, it was better for doing dressing the stone, and they've done a really good job on it. So you can see how it's progressed, like. So, I mean, we look for clues like that all the time, like, to see what about repurposing and what's being repurposed and what could it have been. It's like, there's a lintel on the Maltese temple, which is clearly upside down. It's still there, but it's upside down. There's a doorpost in, I think it's Ajahi temple, which was a doorpost, which is now a step. It's still got the, what we call, like, loopholes, where you would put string through to tie a door on or something. Or pinch holes is another name for them. So you look for all developments and things like that on the stones themselves, what the masons have done, what they were capable of and everything, to try and find clues. Like, yeah, that's about, you know, it's good to look at the tiny details and things like that. Not be swept away by.
Oh, you've just your volume's just gone again, Ziggy.
Just a bit quiet there, Ziggy.
Yeah, still quiet. What happened then? You're very quiet. Oh, something's happening.
Technical difficulties.
It's a blackout. It's a blackout. Look. Put another 10p in the meter.
He's there. It's just very quiet.
Yeah, you're very quiet. I was having some technical difficulties here.
Yeah.
Maybe our microphones.
Didn't have these sorts of problems in the ancient times.
No.
No microphones.
No podcasts either.
No, just shouting.
Oh, there we are.
Can you hear me?
That's it, yeah. Smash him.
Can you hear again now?
Well, I forgot where we were now. I'm just going to throw up another picture here of
A nub receptacle.
this
Yeah.
one.
Water and tenon, innit?
Now, that looks hard to do.
With a deer
It's so
out there.
obvious, isn't it? That, it's just like using wood. It's just a mortise and tenon, which that's what you would call a boss. Leaving that part on would be the boss. You could use it for lifting, and it's got a function. Any nubs we find where we can identify a function for them, then we don't count them. They're not. They're a side stack. It's just a practical thing that the stonemason done at the time.
Do you know where it's from, this one?
I imagine it's probably Egypt or something.
Yeah. It's a lot of trouble to go to that, man. You think they would have just used like mortar or something?
Well, Stonehenge has got them.
Oh well, why? Well, if you're gonna go there,
Yeah.
this is one of the big boys, isn't it, from Stonehenge?
I think, isn't that a fake?
You sense it, mate.
Yeah. I didn't say it was real.
Fake news. Fake news.
This was done for an experiment.
Oh, right. Was it? Oh, so it's not fake. It's...
I can't tell if that's like a CGI image or not. Is it?
It's not that fake.
I think it's done for some archaeology experiments, you know.
Is that a real piece of stone?
Yeah, there's a guy there in the background.
Yeah, but it could just be an overlaid on the...
Oh, well...
No, I'm
Well,
just wondering though. That's whether it's.
Yeah, well, that would be. That wouldn't be a nub, would it? That would be a mortise and tenon.
Do you think?
For me,
Right.
that one, which you can see already on Stonehenge on the uprights. You've got them on top, and you can see where one of the lintels is on the deck in the middle of the middle of the circle, and it's got the female part for it. So it's obviously come off there.
I mean, most people probably have no idea that there are mortise and tenon joints on Stonehenge.
I did not know that.
Yeah, this is new.
Well, that's why I sent you there.
Yeah, but I mean, those
People could see if that got chopped up and then repurposed, you'd have a nub on the stone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they just got it off, they just left it on. So it'd be on the foundation, and you'd be going, "Oh, I found a big giant nub." On here, but it's come from somewhere else.
Do you think, is it possible that all the nubs that we see, the genuine nubs, are repurposed mortise and tenons? Is that possible?
No.
Just an idea.
Shut up, Phil.
But we assume that some of them maybe are. Or
Well,
not.
yeah.
Or would they have just knocked them off?
Yeah. If say that one they showed there with the two blocks where they obviously fit into each other. Yeah, if that's not that one, yeah. No, that one's a different one. That one. Right? Now, if it snapped off, says an earthquake, snapped off, you could still probably use that block on you. But you might still have a slight angled part left, which, you know, you put on the building, you put it on the outside. You don't want that tatty bit in the inside. So go on the outside, you don't bother chipping it off. And it gets smoothed over years later. You know, after thousands of years of use, if they ever last that long, but generally they don't, like. But yeah, it could form into a nub by erosion, a lot of erosion. Yeah.
That's a point. I mean, would the nubs be more susceptible to erosion rather than the surface of the stone because they protrude?
When you look at where they are in rainy places, they don't seem to erode at the same level as the rest of the stone. There doesn't seem to be any marked difference, I can say. The stone looks totally smooth, doesn't look like it's warped anywhere. I have got a couple of photographic ones where they look slightly hooped, as if they drooped. This is like, I worked in the moulding industry on concrete and rubber.
All right.
So all these things that you see when people talk about, they look moulded. They are right, because when you get a failed mould, you get defects, and all the same defects that you see in the stones there, they're all exactly what happens when a moulding fails. If the shuttering sticks to the concrete or the mould, you haven't put enough release spray in the mould, it'll stick to the mould and it will rip and distort. And plus you have to have air vents to let out steam from chemicals if it's rubber, and obviously chemical reactions in concrete and that. Right. So some expansion takes place and you do find little tiny nubs where stuff is creeped out from the sides of the shutter, and all that hasn't quite been sealed and that. But when you pull the shutter, if it hasn't been done properly, you can pull a big chunk of the concrete off, things like that. Anyway, yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? I'll just throw up because I don't think we've looked at this one properly yet.
Right, that one. Look, see the way that one's got the nub in the middle,
Yeah.
right? And it's got the mortise and tenon probably at the back. Now, there's other ones like that in India where you can see them on the building and you can see the nub on the side and you can see where the slot is, where the next bit of stone was going to go in.
Oh, right. So the nub acts as like a marker that this is a mortise and tenon joint block.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So presumably, like, that makes me think that maybe the guys who built it put those marks there for if it had to be renovated or for maintenance reasons.
Yeah. Or it's that's right. Yeah.
It'd be so much easier to put an indentation in there, wouldn't it?
Put an indent, yeah.
Wouldn't it be easier to put an indentation in rather than craft a nub? Because you'd have to take that whole face off, wouldn't you?
Yeah. They have to be. They are designs. There's no doubt about it. On most of the stones, the designs, they actually carved and made. They're not randomly just snap bits off. You know what I mean? And you can see where that is now. I've seen it broken. When you showed the big stones in Cusco down the street, the green ones, some of them being broken.
Is that these ones?
No, the other one, them ones there. Now, some of them on one street, they're completely smashed and they look really brittle. And behind where the nub was, you can see a recess area where it's broke. So I'm thinking, right, is those nubs there telling the race and the next bit of stone, right, it's got to fit because they've already left the slot for it. Do you know what I mean? So there's interlocking. There's an interlocking space which is behind there. So if they ever do need to repair them, they know where certain things are. They know what stones they can pull out or things like that.
That's crazy. I mean, the thing that makes it so crazy is because we're dealing with Peru here and all across America and Central America, and this just does not fit with the standard model of history.
There's a bit.
Especially if this is, what's the word, like a transmission of knowledge or a technique.
Yeah, well, lower sea levels, right, in the past would have allowed islands opened, right, because there'd be much more islands exposed.
Island hopping,
yeah.
You say, right.
To get across the Pacific on decent boats, so you could bring your tech with you. Now, there's temples in Colombia, which people are convinced they've got Hindu statues in them. And that somebody made it across, which you could have, you could have a ship lost, gets blown off course, it ends up in some people, sailors must have ended up in some strange places like they still do now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they get blown off course, right? So they would have had technology that they brought with them, their mythology and everything. If they could have said, well, the ships are wrecked on the shore. We can't build another one. We've lost all our tools. What are we going to do?
Build a temple with nubs all over it.
And let them know we've got it. We got it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the statues don't think they can. Probably an idol at first, and then he builds around the idol. Usually like that.
Yeah.
Then to the altar and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just so fun to speculate about the sort of the history that's the story of our species that's beyond the historical veil, isn't it? Because it's just a mystery. We've not got good answers. So it's fun to speculate. That's why I like Graham Hancock stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ziggy, we've done an hour already.
Yeah. Wow.
And we've looked at 8 nubs.
Yeah.
Are there any more?
Well, I can only encourage people to go on Google Earth, Google Maps, look at the photographs that they provide, look at the 360. You can walk right down some of the temples, some sides and some parts you can't see into. But you can walk right down, you can have a look for yourself on the corners, the lower corners, on the foundations in India and everything. Just do it yourself and have a look. And if you go and travel them, bring photographs back and where they are on, where they are on the temple, not just close-ups, and close-ups as well. Like, you know, it's nice to see the tooling and all that.
Yeah.
Like if people bring them, you know, show us them as well. Like, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And more importantly, go to Ziggy's YouTube channel because you'll get your fill of nubs there. Nubs and nubs and more nubs.
We're about 59 now, I think.
59 videos?
Only short, only very short. And I don't talk over them, I don't try and mislead people or anything like that. They can look, make their own minds up, put a comment in, and I'll try and answer it.
Excellent.
Nice one.
Best way to be, that. That's grand.
We put a link to that in the show notes.
Absolutely, yeah. The link will be there if you're listening.
And Google as well. Link to Google in the show notes.
Well, Ziggy, it's been nice to meet you, finally. And I encourage everyone to follow your work and keep up to date with the latest nub developments.
Hot nub news. Hot off the press.
Yeah. We'll wrap up now and just stay on the line for us for a minute while we play ourselves out. And we'll catch you lot listening on the flip side for part 2 for a bit of news. All right. Thanks, Ziggy. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks.